the CGA Tour, a podcast unlike any other. Now your host, Calvin Alexander.
Welcome back to the latest episode of the CGA Tour podcast. As always here, I'm your host, Calvin Glen Alexander. And on this week's episode of the CGA Tour podcast, I'm joined by the one, the only, Jake Carlson, who rejoins as he does most weeks. We talk about Oklahoma State sports, football, all trending topics from near and far away. But this week, I don't necessarily think we want to talk about Oklahoma State football, but we need to because something's got to be explained on what happened in this game this past weekend.
Yeah.
Whatever game day rituals you have, anyone else has, whatever game day rituals someone has who's listening to the podcast, hey, if you're a K-State fan, keep it up because it worked. Oklahoma State fan, clearly don't. Clearly change up the vibe. Whatever you were doing did not help. Little brother
you're
at a
saying,
soccer game. I'm just going to
you're
say.
saying Gundy's
yeah.
midweek changes didn't work out, apparently.
I'm just saying, we can only do what we can do, right? So, we can tell Gundy to change up his philosophy and his coaching style and whatever he did. But we can also just tell my youngest brother, hey, don't play soccer during that time. Jackson, don't have a friend in town. Just whatever, little stuff's going on in life. Just, let's cut that out,
Yeah,
I'm not going to build a dresser during the middle of an OSU game anymore. I'm going to decide to do that during a different time because clearly me doing that during that time did not help us win.
I'm not going to drive from Oklahoma to Dallas during that time.
See, there you go. Okay, so that's your option,
Which that option's not too hard to avoid.
I feel like you're going to be able to accomplish that pretty easily especially for this week's game. I mean, unless you got something else going on, I feel like you're not going to be driving. Now, the game's at the same time, which is just crazy. Do you know that Oklahoma State had a chance to win the game? Our win probability percentage was at 54% when it was 4th and 5 at Oklahoma State's 33, and K-State got a penalty for a false start with 11 minutes and 24 seconds left in the first quarter.
Was that the last time and first time we were favored?
That's the last time that the score was 0-0, I believe. Because
we weren't favored going into the game.
Well, because the next play is a 38-yard TD pass to Cade Warner. From Will Howard.
Warner's long-lost son. Yeah.
Is it his son? Doesn't Cade Warner play college football? I feel like Cade Warner is Kurt Warner's son.
I honestly think he might be because I know Kurt Warner does have it is his son?
He has two sons playing college football, and this is one of them.
Okay. All right. So now I feel like not as bad because Kurt Warner is kind of cool, but that's not the point here.
Point is we lost badly to a team we should have beat.
Yeah.
Now, when I say a team we should have beat, we were not favored to win the game. The spread had K-State winning by 1.5, even though their starting quarterback was out and had been rumored to be out the whole week.
Do you think Vegas knew? Do you think Vegas knew that their starting quarterback was out, and that's why Kansas State was favored?
Oh, do you, if the starting quarterback hadn't been out, we would have been favored? Because we always do bad against backup quarterbacks.
Right.
Possibly, conceivably, sure.
As we know, Vegas is pretty smart about a lot of these. So.
Yep.
That's why I ask.
Yeah.
But yeah, do we? I mean, we lost. Was it 48 to nothing?
Yeah.
48
One less
nothing.
point than the OU Texas loss.
Less than OU Texas. Lost 48 then. Gundy came in sometime in the fourth quarter, it appears.
Yep.
Probably should have been in much sooner than that. We had.
Agreed.
I want to say I was checking the box score during the game, and it became pretty indicative as to why we were losing. Gundy had the longest rush of the game at 22 yards. Mm-hmm. And I want to say before that, we probably ended with 50-something rushing yards. I didn't really bother looking at the box score to end the game. We probably ended with 50 or so rushing yards. But I know at one point we had 30 rushing yards on 28 carries.
Not good.
You wanna jump into that a little bit? Do we have some?
I
I
mean,
mean,
our O
it's not
line
even.
is.
It's bad. I don't, and I hate to say that, but it's bad. It's been bad all
Previously
year.
well, okay, so Deuce Vaughn, the K-State running back, right?
Yeah,
He rushed for 158 yards in the game. They had another running back who rushed for 44 yards. I mean, you can just keep going here. Do you know what his previous yards per game average was against Oklahoma State before Saturday's game?
Deuce Vaughn.
Yeah, Deuce Vaughn.
I'm gonna assume not
Arguably
over.
the best running back in the Big 12 or second best running back in the Big 12 to be John Robinson.
Yeah, I'm gonna assume it's not over 100. Is it over 100 yards? I don't know if you're
No,
trying to trick me here.
it's under 50. It's like
It's
33. We had only allowed Deuce Vaughn, this is his third year at K-State. I don't know if maybe he didn't play in 2020 or something weird. But last year when we played K-State, he didn't rush for more than 40 yards. And this year he goes off for 158. I know there's different guys. I know there's different personnel. I know there's a bunch of different other stuff going on with the defense. This is one of those games where I don't know how to compartmentalize. I don't know how to put it into words of someone explain to me what happened. Explain to me what happened in layman's terms. Just give me this is one of those where I know Gundy's our head coach. I really wish we had a head coach who was just better at press conferences, or not better. Gundy's such a good guy in press conferences because he never says anything. He always says something
Yeah,
crazy that doesn't really go with it, and it's just very vague. Crazy isn't vague, and we have no
it's
idea
very
what's going on.
vague, very condescending.
Very hey, I'm the head coach. You're asking me questions. I know who's in charge of this situation, right?
And
And that's how
OSU,
head coaches should operate. To be honest, that's how you'd want your head coach to operate in any win or loss. Except for this time, it's dude, we didn't score a point. Can someone explain to me what happened?
yeah. Well, and
Just
OSU
what did you
notoriously,
change in practice? What did you do?
we're pretty tight on media, right? If I'm not mistaken, and we have been for a long time. This isn't anything new. We've been pretty tight when it comes to media availability for um, players. I don't even think they don't allow. Gundy doesn't allow media availability for players. If I'm
Not
correct,
freshmen, not freshmen
not
or
freshmen. Okay,
first year or transfer. You know,
but
and not
like,
freshmen or first years.
when do we ever see like Spencer Sanders available to the media? Is it just people know not to
Um,
ask now? Is that what it
It's
is?
just after practices and stuff, whenever whenever he's made available or whenever he's asked for availability. I mean, I remember when I was doing all the Oklahoma State media stuff, right, and getting my broadcast degree,
Yeah,
that we had availability for the players after Thursday
yeah.
practices. This year, I don't. Maybe something's changed since I've graduated, since you and I've graduated, but in the past, at least, that was a deal, and I
Yeah.
would assume it still is. You can still ask the play. I mean, you can still talk to players after Thursday practices. Thursdays are
hmm
open practices. You can go in and ask questions afterwards. I would assume that's still the deal. I haven't heard anything different.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not saying I wish we could hear from them more, but I kind of do. I kind of do wish we could hear from them more. Um, because like you said, we don't always get the most candid responses from Gundy. He
Yeah.
just kind of I think in his press conference today, he's like, well, you know, we got our butts kicked, and you're like, okay, dude, yeah, we're aware, we got our butts kicked. Thank you. It's just stuff like that where it's like I would like to see a little bit more care, I guess, but that's not really what we're talking about here. We're kind of
W-
tangenting a little bit, but we
We'd
can go into the
rather
press conference.
we'd rather
We
there
want to
be an
know why we
explanation.
lost.
Well,
Right.
hey guys, we're really banged up on O-line. There was an injury on one of the like we thought we'd do better in this scheme of the game. This threw us off. Preston Wilson getting rolled up on hurt us. Not having
Yeah.
Dominic Richardson in the game killed us. Like, just if you want to blame it on injuries, blame it on injuries. Blame it on. But hey, they kicked our ass. Like, dude, we know. We are well aware of what happened.
Yeah.
We're all watching the same game.
Yeah.
This is one of those just, hey, you know what? We didn't prepare our players as well as we needed to. Texas win was a big ego boost, and we didn't get our players prepared enough for this game. We thought that Adrian Martinez was going to start. Like, I understand you do not want to in any situation, right? You and I both work several different jobs and are working current jobs as well too. You don't want to go to your boss and say, or to the public in this case, and admit what you did wrong, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to do that. But also, we're not a head coach of a major university where we're trying to keep the public opinion liking us.
Yeah.
Gundy is in a situation where he doesn't really have to care and worry about the public liking him or not, because the Oklahoma State faithful is not going after him. They're going after
Mm-hmm.
Casey Dunn because there were no points scored, and he's the offensive coordinator. They're going after Derek Mason because there were 48 points allowed, and he's the defensive coordinator, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think people are going to give Derek Mason a little bit easier time because there wasn't really that many points scored in the second half, and I don't know how much you want to say that actually matters a little bit more than whatever. Casey Dunn, I don't know if people are going to go after him that much because Spencer Sanders looked horrible, and Gunnar Gundy had the longest rush of the game for 22 yards, right? I mean, you look it up
Yeah.
here. Gunnar Gundy didn't just have the longest rush of the game. He led our team in rushing yards. The backup
Right.
quarterback, that's Mike Gundy's son, led our team in rushing yards who played the fourth quarter. How?
Yeah. I think I'm glad you brought that up because I think that is like, the whole like Casey Dunn thing. Because I've seen people, on social media, they're like, well, why can't he just design better run plays? This tells me that a lot of people have not, well, as we know, probably not played football before. And I was blessed to, in this circumstance, have my dad as a football coach and all that stuff. But it doesn't take genius to figure out there's only a certain amount of blocking schemes that people do on run plays. They're like run plays aren't the most dynamic thing. Like not every run play is designed to score, right? And I think that's the part that people don't understand is in order to be able point in case the Los Angeles Rams, right? Really tough time running the ball. Why? I don't know. Maybe Andrew Whitworth retired. Maybe they have a lot of injuries on their offensive line. Maybe their running backs probably just aren't as good as they have been in the past. All of those things can be true at the same time. But I'm not sitting here going, man, Sean McVay really sucks at calling plays. Because that's where we're at. That's it. And I know people will be like, well, that's not a fair comparison. Yeah, it is. It's essentially the same thing because we can't run the ball. The Rams can't run the ball. We both can't run the ball for the same reasons. And run plays, you've got your zone blocking, you've got your straight up blocking, you've got counter, you've got power, and a lot of, and then basically everything's just based off of a couple of different run schemes, reach blocking, blah, blah, blah. But when it boils down to it, there's not more than 10 different ways, 10 different schemes to run the football. You have to then work on execution. And I think that's kind of the nuanced part that people just want to point blame at an adult over pointing blame at, I don't want to call them a kid because, they're adults, but they'd rather point blame at the 40-something-year-old than the teen, early 20-something-year-old. And that's completely fair. But to pretend like we don't know why we can't run the ball and to pretend like this is a new thing with Oklahoma State. I mean, you and I talked about this last night. How many offensive linemen have we had drafted in Gundy's tenure off the top of our head?
It's two that I can remember in the top 5 rounds. Tevin Jenkins and Russell Okung. And it's probably more that I just can't remember, to be honest. But in the Gundy era, those are the two that stick out. Of course, the 8th overall draft pick in Russell Okung, I believe. 8th in
Yeah.
2008, I want to say, but I could have the year wrong, of course, too. I didn't do a ton of research on this part of it. But then Tevin Jenkins recently, 2nd round.
Right.
So here's my question to you, though. That's never been like the end all be all for us.
Uh-huh.
That's never been the issue. It's never been,
Right.
oh man, we don't have the great offensive line, so now this
Right.
year's going to suck. That's never been the deal. This year,
Right.
it seems as though the offensive line is definitely needed a lot more than previous years because when we don't play well and Sanders looks injured, we want to defer to the offensive line, right? We
Mhm.
want to go. Everyone is always going to say, "Hey, the guy who took us to a Big 12 championship last year, he's fine. It must be something around him." The head coach who has been with us for 18 seasons, who has had multiple 10-win, multiple 11-win, multiple BCS appearances, not playoff, but BCS appearances, Big 12 championship appearance last year, etc. Right, I can keep going. The
Mhm.
guy who has gotten us all these accolades in this far is not the one at fault. It's usually the difference, usually the change, right? And then it
Yeah.
goes to what's different about this team versus what we've seen in the past. That's where you find a scapegoat, right? For
Yep.
example, the real straightforward and linear explanation is, well, Anthony Davis is fine. He won a championship with LeBron, but Russell
Right.
Westbrook must suck because he's new, right?
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
no one thought that was going to work out before he was traded for. And then it
Right.
was like, oh, wait a second, it's not working out. It's like, who would have thought? Wait, every single person before the trade happened, right? When
Yeah.
Anthony Davis literally is just not healthy. He's a decent basketball player. He just literally played half the games he's been with the Lakers so far. So
Well,
you're
and
going to
I
find the
wanted
scapegoat in what the change is, right?
right. Yeah. And I wanted to get into this too cuz like over the last couple of years, these last 2 years, we Spencer Sanders, to his credit, has probably had the least amount of weapons than we had the previous 4 to 5. Right? I mean, people are like, "Oh, well, Sean Gleason, he got fired." Okay, and we talked a little bit. I don't really think we need to get into this part, but we talked
But,
a
but
little bit about it last
But
night.
he got
Like,
fired from Rutgers. I want to make
he
sure
got
that's
fired from
clear because
Rutgers.
he left Oklahoma State amicably to
He
be
chose
back
to.
closer to
He,
home.
yeah,
He got fired from
allegedly.
Rutgers here recently. Well, but I mean, we're just gonna call
To
it as
his
we see it, right? Like we're
right. We'll
not.
call it as we see it. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that. He had Chuba Hubbard, starting NFL running back, that which the Carolina Panthers, which I don't necessarily think they're a good football organization, but they were willing enough to trade away Christian McCaffrey to allow Chuba to be their starter. They were comfortable with that. So
And
take
Deontay
that.
Foreman,
And
right?
Deontay Foreman. So they have both of those. Then you have Justice Hill, who is also an NFL running back. Um, Tylan Wallace, also an NFL wide receiver. How many, and I know it might be too soon to say, but how many of the guys that we currently have could you say for right now are NFL caliber?
So this is what's a tough question because I don't think anyone from this year, and maybe anyone's a tough thing. Braden Johnson missed the game. If Braden Johnson, I
Yep.
feel like could play in the NFL after this season. The
Sure.
rest of the guys that I feel like can play in the NFL after the season are freshmen and sophomores. Are not able to play in the NFL after the season. They are not.
Yeah.
Ollie
Right.
Gordon, I think he'll be an NFL guy. Bryson Green will be an NFL guy, right? John Paul Richardson will be an NFL guy.
Mhm.
There are several guys on this team that are extremely talented and really,
Yep.
really good at football, but
Mhm.
they are too young to be NFL guys after this year. Like eligibility wise,
Yeah.
they can't be drafted. And
They
John Paul
literally
Richardson might
cannot
have
be
been a
drafted.
redshirt sophomore, but I think he's just a sophomore.
Well, and
And
my point
that's the
is,
deal, and I agree there. He doesn't have a lot of resources around him in Sanders, right? Sanders doesn't have a ton of guys around him that are just hugely helpful.
Right.
But this game was bizarre for thousands of reasons, and the first thousand, in my mind at least, is we didn't score a point. We didn't do
Yeah.
anything on offense, and I don't mean like, oh well, like we got in field goal range, missed a field goal. I mean K State never punted the ball, right? Like we didn't stop them on defense where K State had to punt. We, on the other hand, punted the ball 6 times. We never did anything. We didn't get
Mm-mm.
anything going. We didn't have a play call. We didn't have a play scheme. I'm not getting at Casey Dunn. I'm just getting at some. That's what people who did
Something
not
was
play football
different.
growing up, right, would go, oh well, Big 12 football. I've seen 48 points scored before in a loss. In fact, that's
Yeah.
happened several times. But 0 points scored is an anomaly by far and away,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the Big 12, as we all know. Big 12, for better or for worse, still has the perception of just points just going out the wazoo. Basically, because Patrick Mahomes and OU going back and forth against each other. That's what I think everyone still
Yeah.
has ingrained in their brain. And honestly, like everyone's scoring points now. It's not like the Big 12 is a big defensive thing now. It's just that everyone's
Yeah.
scoring points all over the field now. It's not.
Right.
This isn't my tangent of like me on the soapbox saying the Big 12 is now a defensive conference. It's not at all. It's just now
Mm-mm.
everyone's scoring points. It's just everything's changed there.
Right. And kind of the point is like you said, we we didn't build ourselves on having a strong offensive line like a Wisconsin or a Minnesota, or even a Nebraska, like a Brett Bielema team or any of that stuff. We weren't known to have that offensive line, but what we did have was surefire NFL players at skill positions. And I think people underestimate probably how much that makes up for a lack of an offensive line, right? Like, I think, I'll stand by this. Chuba should have won what is it, Doak Walker, the running back award over Jonathan Taylor because, one, he had more rushing yards. Two, his line's worse. And his line's worse now. Like, I don't want to make this a Chuba versus Jonathan Taylor thing, but Chuba's still chugging, and I know he was hurt this weekend. Jonathan Taylor is not, because his line is all of a sudden really bad. One guy has more talent than the other one. Chuba Hubbard has more talent than Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor has never played behind a bad offensive line. That's not really the tangent here, but we've never had the good offensive line. What we have had is NFL players. Like you said, we have 2 eligible skill guys that could go to the NFL after this year. Braden Johnson and Desmond Jackson. Those are the only 2. Whereas in the past, we're like, oh yeah, he's NFL. Tylan Wallace, NFL. Chuba Hubbard, NFL. Tyron Johnson, probably. We've had multiple players where you're like, okay, yeah. I mean, we even had a quarterback. Our backup quarterback is now playing tight end in the NFL. Jelani Woods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Funny how we messed
that's
that
the
one up.
story. Well,
But,
but did we mess that
I
up
mean,
though? I mean, come on.
no, not really. But
I
like,
mean, because I just got like the soapbox ran here for 2 seconds on Jelani Woods. Were we doing bad? Like it's a
no,
questionable thing of like how could we not have used him better? How could we not have used Tyreek Hill better? How could we not have? But like
and that's
hindsight's
not really the
2020,
question. The
right?
fact is, we had NFL guys. I mean, even hell, Blake Jarwin was an NFL guy for many
And he was a
years,
walk on. Yeah,
and he was a walk on. So I say all that to say people want to sit there and blame the scheme. We just don't have the guys this year. I'm sorry. We did have the guys last year. We don't have them this year. But we knew that. If we had the guys last year, we would have been undefeated. Like
but
that.
what's having the guys though for last year? I want to dive in on that though. Like, what's like? Was it defensive guys? Was it offensive line guys? Like, because last year's team, I think is one of the best teams that we've put together talent-wise in
I
a
agree.
while. So I'm just asking, like, what spot do you think we needed those guys?
Well, I just don't think the skill guys on last year's team were individually as good as some of the previous skill guys. I mean, those receivers that Rudolph had were insane. Like that receiving core was dumb. Justice Hill at running back, Mason Rudolph, James Washington, and then you have a bunch of 6'6" guys that he can just toss the ball up to.
Marcel
Mc-
Aitman is one.
Jalen
And
McCleskey,
McCleskey.
like that. And the funny thing is that receiving core could be beat out by the guys presently on the roster. But they're either hurt or they're like 12 years old. And that's just how it goes. But it's like you said on previous podcasts. We've been able to reload, and right now we are reloading, but we're also rebuilding. And you don't just get to replace James Washington, Tylan Wallace with another senior. Braden Johnson never really played because he was always hurt, and he's still hurt, and that sucks. But at some point, it's like my Chris Paul threshold. Is he just unlucky, or is he injury prone? He's injury prone. That's it. You gotta get over it. You gotta move past it. But Spencer Sanders, to all his credit, has not had the same guys that Rudolph did. He just doesn't. And that's okay. That's not his fault, obviously. But we don't have those same kinds of guys this year, and we didn't have them last year. We don't have, and I know like a Chuba or a Justice Hill or any of that kind of stuff is still hard to come by, but I think that's what OSU fans are accustomed to. So they're like, yeah, let's just. I mean, if Sean Gleason didn't have Chuba Hubbard, we would have wanted him canned after the third game.
Probably. I have a little pushback here though. Jalen Warren, NFL guy. Was
Jalen
on our
Warren,
team
yeah, I
last year.
forgot about him.
He's beating out Najee Harris right now as far as like fantasy points are concerned, at least. Which
Yeah,
I mean, whatever stat you want to look at, you can you
yeah,
can paint your shade whatever you want to, right? But
yeah,
Jalen Warren legitimately looks great, right?
yeah.
There are
Chris
Oklahoma State
Carson, who
guys in
just
the
retired.
NFL. Chris Carson, knowing medically retired, right?
Mm.
Tyron Johnson. Is that last year? Or no, that'd be like 2 years ago,
It
right?
was like 2 or 3 years
Um,
ago. Yeah,
yeah. But there's guys we have. I'm
yeah.
what I think is different about this team this year is that you and I did the Big 12 preseason prediction, and we were both
Hmm.
very conservative as coming off of like, oh, I don't know how good we could be, right?
Right.
It was, well, okay, but we're kind of in a spot where we might not have a ton of great skill guys. We're gonna have to see who kind of wins out of these wide receivers. Who becomes the guy that Sanders locks in when he
Yeah.
goes to, right? Who does he
Yeah.
trust to throw the ball to?
Hmm.
The opening script of the game, right? Stevenson, I think that's it. Number 6. He gets hit in
That
the hands
drop.
with the ball, and
Yeah, that
and
was so
that's a
bad.
3rd and 10. You go, yeah, man, all right, he'll get the next one. The
It would
next
have been a
time we get
first
the
down
ball,
too.
it would have been a first down. It might have even been a touchdown, honestly, from the angle that I saw the TV camera wise.
Hmm.
Maybe in my head, at least think, oh man, all right, he can just break free here on the slant and
Yeah.
be good. But then, like K State stuffed that out where we didn't get that chance again. Sanders looked pretty injured after that as well. Now, I know that this cannot be a ton of fun for an Oklahoma State faithful to listen to, right? Because we've gone on 30 minutes now about talking about how that basically Saturday sucked, and everyone's aware. No
Yeah.
one's thinking, "Wow, you guys are really giving it to a man," but they were good. No one's thinking that. But the last couple things I want to say here is that I think we can still beat KU this weekend.
Hmm.
But coming into the season, you and I both went, all right, 9 to 11 wins. We're somewhere in that window.
Hmm.
That still is completely possible. I mean, played 8 games. There's 4 left.
Yeah.
You know, we get the end of this and say, oh my gosh, this is a 10-win team. We could win out and
I,
have 10 wins. Let me ask you this, okay?
yeah.
What's crazier to think? that we could, in the season, unbeaten. Win 4 in a row, right?
Hmm.
And on the schedule here, we have KU at KU, Iowa State at home, at OU, West Virginia at home. Okay, what's
Hmm.
crazier? We win all 4, or we win just 2 out of 4? What's crazier? Of a what do you see happening more?
Like what would surprise me more? Probably only winning 2 out of 4. Honestly,
Right. I mean, I
like
think 3 or 4 wins for the rest of the
yeah,
season
is
here, right?
is very doable. Well, and this is my other thing because I agree with you, and but it's like you and I said at the beginning of the year. If OSU fans were expecting to go undefeated this year simply because OU was down. If I'm being honest, they're like, oh, we've got this in the bag. OU sucks. When it's why I don't do the whole like, oh well, OU lost to Texas. Who cares? We still have to win our football games. Sure, it's cool. Yeah, you can talk all the smack you want, but at the end of the day, we just lost by 48 to Kansas State. Now you look like an idiot. And I think that's the aspect because if you actually like dug into this OSU team, you knew that it wasn't as good as last year's on paper, at least. And
Defensively, for sure.
I mean, coming into this game, we had or going into Texas, it was the 116th worst passing defense in the country, and we had 3 cupcakes basically before it for a pre. I don't want to say cupcakes, but they were. They weren't tough games. So I just want to tell people like temper your expectations. Well, I don't know what you thought that we were going to be this year. Anything more than what we typically get, you know. And I think that's kind of what we're getting at, sitting in that 9 to 11 window. I mean, if we won 11 games this year, I probably would have been very surprised. But I think we probably fell victim to it too. Baylor, not that good. OU, not that good. As everybody knows, once those things happen, you're always going to have teams that rise up. Like, not everyone's going to suck. That's not how things work, you know. So it's kind of like, sure, I understand wanting your team to go undefeated every year, but have we ever done that before? No. So why was this year your year? There's a difference between upset with a loss and thinking that Casey Dunn should be fired when he's averaged 41 points a game this year.
So, I would say the expectations kept getting raised as the season went on. That's
Which is
what
a good thing.
I think everyone would agree. Coming into
Yep.
the season, it was hesitant to say Big 12 championship, but it was also, hang on a second, we have a chance. Like coming into the season, you and I both were going, we have a chance to get to Big 12 championship for sure.
Absolutely.
We
We
have
think we
Sanders
have a
coming
chance every
back.
year.
We have the same
Yeah.
offensive coordinator. We have the same head coach. We have a new defensive coordinator, but we have a great defensive line. I mean, it's stellar
Hmm.
defensive line. And then we have some guys returning on offense, as
Yep.
far as running backs go.
Yep.
And we've got some great guys coming in defensively who have been around the system for forever. Who, yeah, you know what, Corey Black, like decent. Jabbar Muhammad, decent, right? But we knew they weren't shut down corners or anything like we had before. But we also
Yeah.
didn't go, oh my gosh, there's just like a drop off like no other. We weren't
Right.
going, oh my gosh, dude, the defense is gonna be horrible this year. And it hasn't really been horrible. It's just not been good enough in the 2 games
Well,
that
and
we would needed them to be good enough, to be honest.
it's not what
Right?
it was
Like
last year, basically.
it's
That
not defense is winning this games last year, and you and I were going like, wait a second, should Shane Illingworth start? Like we're undefeated. We're going, should Shane Illingworth start? For
yeah.
a couple weeks, right? Because it just Sanders just did not look good whatsoever.
No.
This year it was like, okay, wait, the script is being flipped. Sanders just looks really good. Defense is allowing a lot of the yards through the air, but we're still winning games.
Hmm.
Texas Tech put up a lot of points on us. We still won. Texas put up a lot of points on us and a lot of scary moments, but we still won. The TCU game's like, okay, don't love how that one turned out, but that's an undefeated team at their place in double overtime when our quarterback's hurt. You tell
Yep.
me we play that game 9 more times, we don't win 8 of those 9 games, right? Like,
Hmm.
like we play TCU straight up. 10 times, fully healthy. They're fully healthy. I think we win 8 out of 10, even if it's at their place, right? Like
Yeah.
that TCU game is just by far and away an annoying game to happen when it did. That you and I talked about it. You definitely stressed it as well too. Having the bye week after the 3, basically, like, I don't want to say preseason games, but after the 3 non-conference games before we play Baylor. Turns out Baylor's not that good. We didn't hit the bye week
Right.
before we played Baylor. We didn't need to get
No.
healthy after playing Pine Bluff before we played Baylor. We really didn't need it. We needed the bye week after we played Texas, or at least
Or
during the
Tech.
season.
Or
I mean,
Tech.
just at least during the season, right? Like,
Yeah.
we could have definitely used the bye week before this game.
Yeah.
All of that is to say, the expectations kept getting raised because, okay, Sonny Dykes, TCU head coach, like before we played TCU, it's like, all right, well, OU lost to TCU at their place, but OU doesn't look great. OU's quarterback got knocked out. So it's like, well, okay, but how hard is it for TCU? K-State, same type of deal. Brand new quarterback in their system. They look different, right? Like Adrian Martinez makes the whole K-State team look a lot better
Yeah.
as what K-State likes to do. He definitely fits their scheme of their like power running game and their kind of counter running game a lot more.
Hmm.
But also, okay, like OU has trouble with that from time to time. OU has trouble with K-State from time to time. We measure ourselves against whoever normally wins the Big 12. For better or for worse, OU normally does win the Big 12, so we're going, okay, that's the measuring stick. If OU's losing to them, then maybe they're good, but also maybe OU's just not that good because they had a ton of offseason stuff, as everyone in the entire world knows.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And so we're compartmentalizing all that. We're putting that in context. We're going, okay, but we still think, okay, we can probably beat Sonny Dykes first year at TCU, long time head coach, of course, at SMU, but this is you know, first year at TCU. And then that didn't work out. It's like, okay, all right. The Texas game, it's like, well, okay, but Quinn Ewers, like 5-star quarterback, he's kind of dicing up through the air. That happens, whatever. Coming to this game this weekend, if you had told me, hey, we're going to play a backup quarterback who has, for his entire career, not thrown more than 200 not thrown more than 300 passes his entire career. He's a junior.
Hmm.
I would have gone, cool. That should be a win. That should be a win. Should not
Yeah.
be should be a win. Instead, it's the worst loss we've ever had is under the Gundy era. The worst loss that any top 10 team has ever had, period. So,
Yeah.
points wise. And that's the part that really just gets to me is that the QBR rating, like the quarterback rating of Will
Hmm.
Howard here against at TCU just last weekend, not the 29th, but the 22nd of October, he went 13 to 20. His QBR was a 90. He threw 1 interception, 2 touchdowns, wasn't sacked. Pretty darn good overall. His completion percentage was higher than the game against us. But like he's a pretty darn good quarterback.
He can
The
throw.
4th and 10
That's
play was crazy how the guy was wide open, but he also hits him in stride. Like, if a
hmm
corner had been on that wide receiver, I'm not sure the corner's able to do much besides get a pass interference call or play the
or
ball.
or if he just turns around.
Well, but like,
Yeah.
it was an insanely well thrown ball, is my point. This
Yes.
wasn't like a
Oh, it was
weird,
a great
like,
throw.
underthrown thing and the corner was nowhere to be found. This was just like,
Hmm.
okay, he hit the guy in stride and they were good. K-State hit every single point they wanted to, as far as they did everything they wanted to on the football field the entire time. And our expectations kept getting raised week over week, because Texas doesn't look that good. OU doesn't look that good. K-State looks not that good. They lost to Tulane earlier this season. Tulane's not good, we would think. Hang on.
I mean,
Decent
they're
Tulane's
not.
top 25. They're not bad. Right?
Yeah.
So but we're all my expectations are getting raised. I'll say myself, my expectations were like, well, Big 12 championship kind of.
But
The
let
TCU
me
game
ask
happens, and it's like Big 12 championship's still possible.
let me ask you this, because I agree with you. Expectations raised and all that stuff, and I think that's what we've wanted, provided that everyone uses it well. I mean, Alabama loses a game to Tennessee, and they're not like fire everybody, fire Saban, you know, because that's just it's stupid, you know. But would you agree that our expectations were raised more so because of how other people looked opposed to just how we looked.
Oh, for sure. I mean, my expectations were going up because the other teams around us didn't look as
Right,
dominant as previous years. The
right.
bar is set by OU in Texas almost for my entire, like, from what I can remember. Texas, I don't even know why I remember it that well about Texas being, because I guess basically Vince Young, Colt McCoy, but after that, it's not. In all due respect to all the Texas faithful and fans and friends who've been on the podcast who went to Texas or have listened to it, they have not been the team to beat in the Big 12 comparatively to Oklahoma State or to OU at all, like whatsoever.
No,
We
no.
year in year out have been the second best team in the Big 12 for the past decade since 2012. You want to go back to 2006? Probably not. Want to go back to 2010? Yeah, still Oklahoma State's the best team in the Big 12, second best team in the Big 12. Period.
Yeah.
So when the best team in the Big 12, OU, doesn't look great, right? And then you've got just a bunch of other stuff here. I mean, West Virginia looks bad,
Yeah,
really bad. Iowa State, you know how many games
bad.
they've won in conference? 0. Like,
Yeah.
they're usually the team that gives us fits.
Mm-hmm.
Every year we know it's, crap, it's going to be Iowa State. And they still could give us just a tough time. Their defense is really good. They're not going to make it to a bowl game, I don't think. They're 3-5 right now. They've got 4 games left in the season, too. They might make it to a bowl game, but if they do, it'll be really tough.
So I'm gonna do the old what if card here.
Yeah.
If Adrian Martinez plays, I don't think we're losing 48-0. Do we have a chance to win?
No.
Okay.
We lost. We didn't score a point.
I mean, I agree. I'm just,
Yeah.
Similar, probably very similar to the Dylan Gabriel thing, right? Where it's like, well, they wouldn't have won, but they definitely probably wouldn't have lost 49-0.
Yeah, I think if Adrian Martinez plays, then maybe we don't give up 48, but we also maybe do give up 48. I don't know. Like, that's their starting quarterback. I mean, it's their starting
Yeah,
quarterback. I'm saying we had a better chance of holding them to less points if their starting quarterback played over their backup. Like, that seems like a crazy thing to believe.
I agree, but he can't throw. That's the one
Well,
thing
and the
that
clock
that
has
gets
to.
me.
The clock moves, faster when there's a guy running the
Yeah.
ball. Yeah, that would be the deal here, right? Like, then we're going maybe 35-0.
So the reason we didn't score, sorry. The reason we didn't score points, I think we obviously know it's an anomaly, and we've been playing with a banged up offensive line seemingly all year. I don't know if we've even had our center. We were playing our third string center at one point, a bunch of that kind of stuff. Why was today the day where they're like, I know Kansas State obviously outplayed us and they obviously had a pretty good game plan on how to stop us. But did we not score due to probably a little bit of Gundy's ignorance to keep trying to run the ball? And I say Gundy's ignorance because I think if Casey Dunn could throw it 100 times in a game, he probably would. He's a wide receivers coach. I mean, what do you want me to say? And I'm not. So, and Gundy has said on multiple instances, well, we want to be a run first team. We want to establish the run. And sure, that's fine. If that's your offensive game plan, it's worked for 18 years for you to win however many games, right? I'm not going to sit here and doubt that necessarily his offensive game plan isn't working, but I just, why didn't it work? Why didn't anything work today? Is it as simple as to boil it down just to injuries?
That's what I want to believe. That's what you want to believe. That's what everyone will want to believe. That's really hard to believe, though.
It sounds like an excuse, and I think that's kind of what you and I are both getting at, right? It just sounds like an excuse, and so this is where I kind of want to get into a conversation that you and I kind of planned it out and talked about last night. The coaching, the patterns that we have started to see with OSU football. You've seen them much longer than I have, but I've seen them since, for the last basically. Um, and kind of just the little bit more nuance that I think goes into maybe some of the hires that we make and, maybe some of the stuff that we do. Um, you brought up a really great point last night when we were talking about, we had this big conversation about, is we seem to consistently be able to beat teams that we are more or less talented than, if you want to look at stars and stuff like that. But we seem to consistently, and I say consistently because we do it every year. Like I said, we've never been undefeated. We seem to consistently lose to teams that we are seemingly more talented than. Have we had a year where the only loss we've had is to Oklahoma in the last 10 years?
No. No.
Have we had a year in the last 10 years where the only teams we lost to were Texas and Oklahoma?
No, because we usually beat Texas, honestly.
Right. So that means we are losing to teams that are, for lack of a better term, worse than us or less talented. And you brought up, okay, so is this a pattern? And I said, absolutely, it's a pattern. It's been happening. So what do you think it comes down to? Because I think I'm going to kind of throw this game out the window and just talk in a more broad aspect, like losing to Iowa State last year and, you know, losing the Big 12 championship game and stuff like that, where, there have been multiple years where we've lost to teams. I mean, Texas Tech, right? We lost to Tech, what was that, 3 years ago, I want to say? Because we shut
Yeah,
them out last year. Yeah.
4 years ago.
So what do you think the problem with that is? Because it is consistent at this point.
So I don't think there's enough consistency to draw from yet. Because after thinking about this a while, I don't think there's a ton of. So in 2019, we lose to Texas, we lose to Texas Tech, and we lose to Baylor and OU, and then we lose to A&M in the Texas Bowl. Right. That's
Hmm.
been our worst year of recent memory. We went 8-5. Um, Losing to Texas, losing to Texas Tech, bummer. But Sanders threw like 7,000 picks. I mean, it was just bad.
That
I
was
mean,
that game.
it was like his touchdown interception ratio that year was 16-11,
Yeah.
and Drew Brown ended up finishing out the year. Like it was bad,
Yeah.
right? There's a lot of stuff where I'm like, well, the here and there, like we could be, but with Oklahoma State, every single year it just seems we're so close. Like we are riding this roller coaster and we're waiting to get to the biggest possible like exclamation point. We're waiting all the way into the end of the ride.
Hmm.
And the ride just keeps going and just keeps going. And then there's a drop. And this game is the biggest drop we've ever seen. Like biggest
Right.
free fall, just straight
Yeah.
off the cliff. But but you have to throw it out the window because it's like, okay, well, we not only do we have probably we have the easiest team to play against talent wise this weekend.
Hmm.
Iowa State's way worse record wise. West Virginia is way worse record wise. Jaden Daniels might play for KU, who was their Heisman hopeful, and he might start. He's starting to practice this week apparently, so that's really annoying. you know, but there's not like a big trend of us losing to teams that were more talented than. There's a big trend of us having like letdown games after winning a game.
Hmm.
That's what the trend really is. Is that so? For example, 2021, right? We play we play 14 games. We lose in the Big 12 title game after
Yep.
basically conquering the foe when winning 37-33 being OU, right? Big letdown, you know.
Yeah.
And we should be Baylor in that game. It should not have been a question. We should be Baylor. I think if that game's played 10 more times, we probably win 7 out of 10. I'm not gonna say
Hmm.
10. I'm not gonna say 8. I'm not gonna say none. Or win 7 out of 10. But that's a game where it's like, crap, man, how in the world does that happen? How do you not beat the team that you are more talented than, where your head coach has been there longer, knows the system more than Dave Aranda knows Baylor, you would think at least. Like, how does Dave Aranda outcoach us? Basically.
Yeah.
Well, I'm annoyed after that game's over because I'm going, man, Baylor hit on another head coach. They have another great head coach there.
Hmm.
It's like they just keep getting great head coaches. But last year, of course, we also lost to Iowa State. That was after beating Texas by 8 at Texas. So bless you.
Sorry.
So there's just we seem to have like letdown games. We just seem to have like peaks and valleys, and the valleys are never really that bad because we don't really lose more games in a row. I'm knocking on wood here. I'm trying to
Hmm.
jinx this game this weekend, but like the national championship game, okay, we lost. We lost by 5. Baylor
Yeah.
didn't like our offense just couldn't score enough to win that game. You know,
So would you
we
would you call it just an inability to get up for bigger games,
no, I see. I think it's
or is it
different.
the
There is that.
opposite?
Yeah, I think that's fine. We get up for the big games. We get up for the 7-point homecoming underdog game against Texas,
Yeah.
where everyone's banged up. We don't know for sure if Sanders will play, but we think he will, but doesn't practice all week. We get up for those games and somehow we win those.
Yeah.
It's the K-State game when they're backup quarterback. It's the backup quarterback game. It's like the letdown game of like coming in. We should be the backup quarterback. We just beat Quinn Ewers. She's a 5-star.
Yeah.
Will
And
Howard not famous. Will Howard famously not a 5-star. Right, like
yeah.
Quinn Ewers is. We should beat it's like we have letdown games against teams we should beat after
So
we've just had a big emotional win.
my issue with this is I would call it a pattern because I do think it is consistent. Um, but I just think it's such like an odd thing because people in national media still herald Gundy almost more than they herald the Oklahoma State program, which is bizarre to me. But that's neither here nor there. Those are games that great coaches don't lose. And do I think that Gundy is a great coach per everybody else's definition? Yeah, probably. I mean, he dragged a program basically up from the mud and made it what it is today. Made it where you're like, okay, that team has a potential to go undefeated, basically. So I obviously I give him credit there where I don't always in the past. But this is I think that's why like I sit there I put him on my little like Bradley Beal superstar thing. Is Bradley Beal a superstar? I would say probably not. I would say he's a star. He's a consistent all-star. But those are the margins that make Bradley Beal not as good as a I don't know NBA that well, but you understand what I'm saying, right? And I'm sure a lot of other people that listening understand what I'm saying. And that's the difference between you see all these records and you see all these stats and you're like, "Oh my gosh, Oklahoma State has won so many games and we have nothing to show for it." Nothing.
Hold up.
And I think
Nothing?
nothing Alamo Bowl like
Dude, Fiesta Bowl win. Come on.
yeah, and that's what the first one that we've had in how long?
How I'm looking through our win-loss record, okay?
Uh-huh.
Over the past since Gundy's been head coach. I mean, this goes all the way back to Pat Jones. I mean, this is on sportsreference.com, right? Like I'm looking at this
Yeah.
the spreadsheet here, okay? How many years do you think of the Gundy era has he
Mhm.
won double-digit games?
9,
Okay, well, I mean, it's less than 9. It's 7, right?
7. Okay.
7 out of
Yep.
18,
So that's
okay?
over a third of the time.
So, I mean, and his worst Gundy's claim to fame has gotta be his worst year is his first year. He's 4-7 his first year as head coach in 2005. Since then, hasn't missed a bowl game, which I know is a big prideful moment for every Oklahoma State. I mean, beating Texas was like, "Hey, we're going bowling again." We're six
Yeah.
and one. Was a really cool deal to say. Always is. Do you know what the highest ranking Oklahoma State has ever had under the Gundy era in the AP
Isn't it
poll?
2? Isn't it
Mhm.
2?
Yep. Do you know what the highest they've ever
Wasn't
finished with was 3?
3? Both in the same year, I would assume,
Yep. Oh,
right?
yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Fiesta Bowl win, right? When you say we don't have anything to show for it, maybe that's the big difference here between like why I'm still a Gundy fan and maybe and I don't know if you're not. Not trying to put words in your mouth, but like we have stuff to show for it.
I just think it's not the stuff that the other teams with these records and these amounts of wins have to show for it. And I think if you're going to sit there and you're going to put us, you told me that 20-3 stat the other day,
Yeah.
right? Um, it was 20-3 over the last 23 games, and the other teams were on there with the other good records were Ohio State, right? Alabama, Georgia. Am I missing anybody?
I'm looking up here to see. I think there is one person you're missing, but yeah, I'm trying to find it right now.
And and my question is, one of those isn't like the other. Sure, a lot of wins is great. Winning helps you get places. But if you're not winning the games that when they truly matter or when you're truly supposed to, then an Alamo Bowl means nothing. Because I've seen it for, over the last 8 years. How many Alamo Bowls have we played in over the last 8 years?
Let's see, 2. In
Two?
2010, yeah, we played the Alamo Bowl in 2010 and in 2016.
Yeah, and we're projected to go there again because we're third in the Big 12. And that's just kind of how it goes. But I don't think, like a Cotton Bowl or, and there's a couple of years that you can probably throw out where Jax Garman was the quarterback and that kind of James Castleman was our leading rusher in a bowl game and that kind of stuff. Um, that didn't happen, but I'm sure a lot of OSU fans remember that play where he like trucked the person and the paint chipped off, all that fun stuff. But
Yeah,
it,
Cactus
it
Bowl. Yeah,
yeah, it's if you're gonna start having those records, you've got to start putting something with it. And I think the bowl games are great, but it's the one thing that even like you and I both agree on: the lack of the Big 12 championship is the real kicker. And at least only having played in one of those games, only playing in one Big 12 championship, that is. Because Gundy's won what one, right? And
yeah,
that's not a dig. That
yep.
that that's an
Nope,
honest
that's
question.
true. That's true.
One in
One.
18 years, and I know we're um, competing with OU, and we're competing with Texas and all that stuff, but there's a lot of other schools and other conferences that are competing with other great teams.
How many
So
how many SEC championships does Georgia have in the same time span?
I want to say it's 2.
Should they fire Kirby Smart?
No, because Kirby Smart hasn't been there for 18 years.
Okay, But if Kirby
They
Smart,
won
but I
it.
mean,
They won
he
it in
just won
his
national
third year.
championship last year. Well,
Yeah, they
but
won it in his third year.
we're not LSU. Would be my point.
No,
We
we're
do
not
not have the
LSU.
luxury of saying, yeah, let's go ahead and just get rid of Gundy because you know what? The next guy down the line we can hire, we're going to get him from Notre Dame, and he's killed it at Notre Dame, and he's going to put on a weird accent in front of all of our basketball fandom because he likes us that much, right? Like,
Right.
we are not, much as I wish we were them, that is not Oklahoma State University. We are not having $50,000 NIL deals to our offensive linemen who come in. We are not that school.
No.
We do not have the biggest recognizable logo in college football, which in my mind is either Texas or Alabama. We do not have 5-star recruits banging at our door at quarterback. We do not have that luxury. We can't say, "Oh, you know what? Let's
And
just go
you're
get
right.
whoever."
It's apples to oranges. I think that's kind of what you're saying, but especially on the recruiting front. And again, I don't think firing Gundy is the solution, but you and I talked about this. He is both the problem as much as he is the solution. Because I don't know right now if there's anybody that we could get, but Georgia fired Mark Richt and got Kirby Smart. Not saying that's what we would do because we don't have a defensive coordinator that went to Oklahoma State that is on Alabama like Kirby Smart was. People seem to forget the fact that he played at Georgia and he learned all of his stuff under Nick Saban. He became the defensive coordinator, all that stuff. We don't have that guy, at least not to my knowledge. And we'll bring up the, like a Zach Robinson name in a little bit. But that, I think that's kind of my thing is like, Oklahoma State is not Georgia, and they never have been, and they probably never will be. Because Georgia is Georgia as long as I've been alive. But there are two programs that were very similar to Oklahoma State before they fired their coach. Georgia and Clemson. 8, 9, 10, 11 win years consistently, losing to teams that you shouldn't lose to. Georgia lost to South Carolina. I don't know if you remember that. They lost to South Carolina at home,
I remember that being a thing.
which honestly might be as bad as this loss because South Carolina that year was nowhere near the caliber that Kansas State was. But again, I don't think we should fire Gundy, but something has to change. And it's funny when like what Georgia's offensive coordinator. Do you know who it is?
No,
It's our old offensive coordinator. The
I
one
mean,
who
how
took the
far
Southern
ago?
the one who took
Yeah,
the Southern Miss job.
yeah. I mean, the head coach. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So and I wasn't he like in the running or something for our OC spot after Yurcich left, allegedly, and then he decided not to take it or something. He went to the Browns. He stayed at the Browns or something, whatever.
Nonetheless, yeah.
Yeah, doesn't really matter. But I just think there's a certain point where you've got this coach that's there for so long, and there's two football programs that were in pretty similar spots. Now we weren't as successful as Georgia was when they had Vince Dooley, um, passed away this week, but we weren't as successful in the '80s as Georgia was when they had Vince Dooley. But we did have Heisman Trophy but we also had two of the greatest running backs to ever play professional football on the same team in the '80s. So I think there needs to be a change. I'm not quite sure what it is, and I don't think necessarily a lot of people done, i.e., Clemson and Georgia, would be the change that OSU would do in firing their head coach. But it worked pretty well for those two teams, and those two teams were in very similar positions that OSU was. Now, both of those programs again are better football programs, but it's starting to look pretty similar. Clemsoning became a verb at one point.
I'm
Now
with
the
you.
sky falls if they go undefeated.
I'm with you, but do you know how much Auburn is probably kicking themselves that they don't have Gundy? Or at least the success Gundy's had with OSU? Would you rather be Auburn or OSU right now?
Right now, I mean, they just fired their coach, but Auburn also has a national championship.
I mean,
They've got
technically you
something to
do.
hang their hat on
But
in
okay.
the last decade.
I mean, we've got a Big 12 championship in the past. 11 years. You know, you want to stretch it a year.
That's not a national championship.
It's also not Cam Newton and a recruiting scandal. They should never have gotten Cam Newton.
I mean, I know that, but that's not really the point.
So, but if it's national championship or bust, that's not Oklahoma State. Like we're not national championship or bust school. If it's national championship or bust, I think the conversation you and I are having is just not worth it because we're just not in a position to play for national championship anytime soon. The Big 12 championship hurt last year, losing the way we did. But you know what really hurt about it? It really wasn't even the way that we lost. It was really the fact that we know it's a cycle. We're on the flow chart, right? You have like 7 different spots on it.
Mm-hmm.
This is the could have contended for Big 12 championship but injured year, right? Next year will be the either Sanders comes back and it's the contending for Big 12 championship. Everyone should be healthy and the guys are ready year. You know, like it's the 2017 year with Rudolph and Washington, and we should all do it. But then there's a weird Central Michigan game. Like we're just in a different spot in the flow chart every single year. Because if it's hey, this Big 12 team should contend for a national championship next year or this year or whatever year, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if that's I don't know if Oklahoma State contending for a national championship is within the next 5 to 7 years. I don't know if it is. We're not that school. OU maybe, but OU will
Is
be
that not
gone.
concerning though? Would you not expect to be there by now?
Not for how everything's gone previously. No,
Which makes
2017.
it
I
that makes it a pattern though.
but 2017 was the year where I was like, hang on a second, this would be the year for us to contend for a national championship because the year before then we came into the season, 2016. I mean, that's the root. I mean, I don't have to go into it too much. That's the Rudolph year. That's the
Mm-hmm.
Rudolph Washington year. But it's a cycle. You're not going to hit like the way for us to win the national championship is to have a Joe Burrow LSU out of nowhere. Joe Burrow with LSU looked completely different over one offseason. Completely different. His whole
Mm-hmm.
trajectory of his life, his career, his NFL, everything changed over one offseason, right? But that's the type of year we would have to have for me to go, wait a second, hang on. Spencer Sanders is going to throw for a college football record 62 touchdowns in a year. And the year before then, he looked like he was just an average quarterback. What happened, right? That's the type of thing that would have
So
to happen for us to be because we're not like Gundy's proud he hasn't ever gotten a 5-star recruit, and he's made it work this many times. We 7 out of 18 years we've had a double-digit winning season. Before
yeah.
then, I'm scrolling for a while before I see a double-digit winning season, and it's 1987 and 88 when we do have Barry Sanders and Thurman Thomas on the team, right?
Two Hall of Famers.
But also 2 incredibly good running backs, right? Like a Heisman
Yeah.
Trophy winner and then, Hall of Fame, NFL Hall of Famer and College Football Hall of Famer
Yeah.
at that point too.
I mean,
It's
I
just
hear you, but are we just content with winning 10 games and going to some bowl game? Like, is that
I'll answer the
because
question
you
just
can't?
straight up right now. this would be the worst time ever to change a head coach for Oklahoma State. You give Gundy and the new Big 12 a whole 5 years. Gundy's younger than my dad. Gundy's not 60.
I mean, I
I
don't
mean,
disagree
right? Like
with you.
but
I
I'm just
don't
saying,
think we should fire him, but it's just like, dude, you got to change what you're doing. Something that you are doing is not working.
I feel like we have this conversation like once a year on
That's a
after the loss,
problem
but
because we lose to
but
teams.
it's
If
not.
we lose to OU, we lose to OU. Sure, if we lose to OU, okay, so be it. They're better. They're more talented, usually better coached, have better players, et cetera, et cetera. We lose 48-0 to Kansas State. We lose to Central Michigan with multiple NFL players. That's when it's like, okay, there's an issue here that is not being resolved because it consistently happens year in and year out.
What would you say though is the? I mean, because I don't think the issue in that point. I don't think the issue that can be corrected is Gundy.
No, but I think he's too prideful in the fact that, oh, we've never had a 5-star recruit. Yeah, dude, that's not something to be proud of.
But I mean,
What do all the national champions have? If your goal's not to win a national championship, and I know everyone has to be realistic every year. Like I'm not stupid. I didn't go into 2014 thinking, you know what, this team's going to be really good. Right? But I went into 2016 thinking this team's going to be really good, and we lose our second game of the year.
yeah.
So I just
The
think
game
it's a
should never
lot
have
of
been that close. We shouldn't have. We
and I
technically
think,
didn't lose, but it should never have that
yeah,
close. I'm with you.
people want to call it fluky. People want to say, it shouldn't. The play didn't count. Yada yada yada. I'm aware. I was at the game, and I know you were too. But Central Michigan was within 4 points going on to their last drive. Like, what are we doing at home? And so I think it's what I always come back to. It's recruiting. It's you have to make some bold hires. I think Derek Mason is a step in the right direction because I think he will be good. I think he potentially could attract some transfers, especially if we get like Auburn transfers in. Those guys could potentially come in and be the best player on the team. Like that's very possible,
Yeah,
especially defenders.
I was hoping we
Um,
get some DBs this year.
it it might turn that way with recent. I mean, they fired their coach today, and Derek Mason
There's
clearly. I and as far as I know, Derek Mason probably is not getting a better offer right now based on the way this year's going. So he will most likely be back next year, which I'm happy about. But I think that was a step in the right direction. But I think with our OC hires, and I think that's where like the prideful and stubbornness has more so come from on the Gundy front. Is I know we always have good offenses, but I think they could be better. I think they could be less stubborn. I think we don't always have to do the Oklahoma State offense. You have to adjust your offense to your talents. We don't have good enough running backs this year to run the ball. Why are you running the ball 30 times for 28 yards? Like, at what point where you're like, yep, this ain't working, let's keep doing it? And so I think it's just stuff like that where it's like you kind of have to mature as a coach. But hiring a guy from Princeton and hiring a guy from Shippensburg and, all that stuff, those aren't bold hires. And we talked about the Jim Knowles thing at nauseum last year where it's like, okay, he got picked off at Ohio State basically because we couldn't compete with the offer, and he's almost guaranteed to go undefeated with that offense, which it's looking that way right now. So, and that's always going to be the case because it's Ohio State. If Georgia came calling, if Alabama came calling, any of that stuff.
But that's why I'm
But
saying we're not national championship. Is because we're not Ohio State. We're not Georgia. Our guys
well,
are still going to get picked off by those programs. If we have the
sure,
offensive coordinator, if we have the defensive coordinator, that's why I'm saying the expectations are just not there yet. I'm not saying they won't ever be. I'm just saying they're not there. In 5 years from now, what's going to have to change for us to be a national championship type of contending team? And it's going to be getting like some transfer. I mean, it's going to take some crazy type of deal to happen.
recruiting.
But yeah, but like,
It's not having
yeah.
a coach be prideful about the fact that he's
But that
never had
doesn't
a
mean we're
five
not
star.
going after 5 stars, though. I mean, Gundy might be prideful about it, but that doesn't mean he's not going after him.
Well, we
He's,
know one that he didn't go after, but
I mean, yeah, he didn't
that
go
was a
after
that was a
Dax Hill
dig.
as hard
That was a
as
dig.
he. Yeah, I mean,
That
he
was a
didn't go after
dig.
Dax Hill as hard as he probably should have, but whatever.
I just think there are things that he probably could put a little bit more effort to that he chooses not to because he's him.
There's a lot of stuff in my mind with Gundy where it's like we speculate. We don't know if he okay. Well, is he not going after Dax Hill and flying a helicopter down onto the field like Harbaugh did because he just knows he probably won't get him? Or is he not doing that because he goes, I'm not going to sell out for this kid. He should already come because we had his brother. We don't know. It could be either way. We no idea, right? Like no idea. I mean, Gundy Gundy is a great head coach. Is he the best head coach Oklahoma State's ever had? By far and away, yes. Yeah,
Correct.
easily. No one, including myself, wants to go from the best head coach you ever had to a new head coach. No one. No one. No one's going to go, let's take the best head coach you ever had. The OAN stuff was the closest we got to Gundy maybe leaving. Because that's all right, dude. You can't really be just hardcore going one political party when you're the head coach of an Oklahoma State football team
Yeah.
with just a bunch of different personalities around. Whatever political aspects you believe in, you can't be, you can't be forcing religion, you can't be forcing political beliefs and putting it out there publicly of exactly what you believe in, person just to have to follow suit, right? Like that's
Yeah,
just
I
not a
mean,
thing.
go look at what Kyrie Irving's doing right now. Let me get back to me. Right?
Leave that where it is.
And
But yeah, I'm with you.
yeah, I'm
It's,
reinforcing your point there. Yeah.
but with that to say, do I think Gundy is the perfect head coach? No, because we haven't won the Big 12 championships when we've had the chance. We haven't won the games we should have when we've had the chance. This year, arguably, you could say, you know what? If you take Spencer Sanders out, you put in Gunnar Gundy in that TCU game, maybe we're able to get a couple more first downs and run out the clock. And then all of a sudden, we're 7-1 right now and have beaten a TCU team for their only loss of the season at their place, right? I mean,
Hmm.
it's a conceivable what if, right?
Yeah.
But we're so split in hairs here. That Central Michigan game is such a weird deal. The NCAA violations with the Des Bryant thing. Des Bryant should have gone down as the best receiver in college football history with Brandon Whedon as his quarterback. It shouldn't have even been close. Or Zach Robinson, I forget which one because it was a little bit ago. Right? Des Bryant should
Hmm.
have had the greatest season ever. But the fact that he went to dinner with Deion Sanders, didn't know if he could or not, and then lied about going to dinner with Deion Sanders, he couldn't play the rest of the season. Like there are the weirdest things that happen with Oklahoma State's program. The basketball stuff we go into for days with Boynton, the Central Michigan game, the 7 plays at the goal line last year against Baylor where we're an inch or two away, and every OU fan's like, well, here's a screenshot. Here's a screenshot. All of it sucks. Like, all of it, you and I are in agreement here. It's not what we want to have happen. But at the same point, we're not going, hey, you know what? There's this backup quarterback who's sitting behind a 5-star at XY school. What if he wants to transfer to Oklahoma State next year? While Garrett Rangle's still getting a year under his belt, while Gunnar Gundy's still getting however many years under his belt he needs or whatever. I mean, he's Gundy's son. I'm going to, of course, be just naive and pessimistic that he's that good because he hasn't played great and he's Gundy's son. I mean, screw it. Like, I don't know what you want me to say. Do I believe Gundy's going to be the next coming of Gundy? No.
Yeah.
I'm just not. I'm just not. I mean, I wish I could believe that, but Gunnar was not
He's
getting
not hit
recruited by
anybody.
Georgia and Texas to go be their starter. He wasn't, right? So I'm going to not,
Gunnar Gundy also isn't handing the ball off to Thurman Thomas and Barry Sanders.
also true. So unless there's
That's
some,
a joke. Gundy was
well,
actually
no,
a very
no.
good
Gundy was
quarterback.
I mean, Gundy owns almost every stat until Sanders Rudolph has taken it over.
Right, right.
I mean, Gundy was but I think everyone knows that. It's one of those things where like for the scenario to happen where Oklahoma State goes from being a decent Big 12 team to an elite Big 12 team. Well, I think we're there. I think we are an elite Big 12 team. And I think when UCF comes in, BYU comes in, Houston comes in, and Cincinnati come in, we're still in a position to be a great Big 12 team and an elite Big 12 team, and the Big 12 run through Oklahoma State. But what's going to happen is that the OU monkey's going to get off our back because we literally won't play them.
Mm-hmm.
The Texas bar will get off our back because we literally won't play then. And then all of a sudden, the hardest games on our schedule will be TCU, will be K-State, will probably be Cincinnati. It will be BYU every so
going
often. It will
going
be
to Provo in the middle of
UCF.
November.
Yeah, can you imagine the last game of the year being in Provo, Utah, and it's like, oh, wait, hang on a second, it's really cold,
Yeah.
and it's at elevation.
Yeah.
Like, what Midwest teams playing at elevation, really? Not many. So, the 2011 Iowa State game, like, there are things you can go back to and be like, well, that we should have been playing a national championship. Oklahoma State should have been playing in a national championship football game in 2011. And if we play a national championship football game, let's say this in 2011, if we win the national championship and we're an Oklahoma State national championship winner, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then would you rather be OSU or Auburn? Can I ask that? What if? Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's completely fair. I mean, OSU, especially given what's happened over the last couple of years, but I think
our temper is going to be longer because we are not Auburn or an SEC team. Our willingness to go through the ups and downs is going to be longer because we are not them.
Yeah.
So we have to stick it out and we have to keep doing what it is to try to figure it out. I don't think you're calling for Gundy's head. I don't think anyone's calling for Gundy's head right now. I think people are calling for both OC and DC's heads because of how that game went against K-State. I don't know how we're going to put that into context here in like 2 years whenever we're talking about another podcast of like, yeah, remember that one year we lost to K-State 48-0? And what the heck was the deal with that? Oh, Sanders tore his labrum? Oh, and then he played through it for a whole season and we didn't know? Oh, okay, that was weird. But I'm speculating. We have no idea.
No.
So, let me ask you this. You got the KU game this weekend, right? We're currently a 1.5 favorite to beat KU at their place. This podcast has to end at some point. So, how do we feel about the game? We think we can win.
Yeah, I think we can and should win. But they've clearly got some kinks that they need to work out. I think Kansas State is probably more talented than Kansas.
Yeah.
I think if Kansas State goes and plays Tulane again, they're not losing to Tulane. But at the end of the day, we lost to Kansas State. So I think the more ridiculous thing is the fact that we have 3 road games in a row. Right? Was it 3 in a row?
What, the KU's lost? Yeah.
No, 3 road games in a row, or is it 3 out of 4?
Oh no, this is our second road game. I mean,
so it went TCU away, Texas at home,
this
and
is
then
our
away.
Yeah.
I think that sucks, especially having the I'm not here to complain about the schedule, but we complained about the bye week during the bye week. So, having three out of 4 games be away games, especially considering you would probably like to alternate or have a max 2, right? And have, you know, home, away, away, home, not away, home, away, away with your bye week in the third week of the season. But like all things considered, we should win this game. If Jalen Daniels plays, I'm much more concerned. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's disagreeing. I mean,
I,
this will be a tough game no matter what.
I just don't know what to expect this week offensively. And to be honest, the game is at the same time as Tennessee and Georgia, so I might not be watching all that much, given that it's Kansas and we should win. But and I think you and I had pretty close scores for the Kansas State game. We definitely had us not scoring 0 points. Um, what's kind of your leaning here?
Over under is 65.5. We're actually favored by
Jeez,
2. As part of like the pick center from ESPN.com.
65 and a half seems like a lot.
A lot of points for an injured Oklahoma
Yeah,
State team and an injured KU team, a quarterback at least, if Jalen Daniels does start.
yeah.
We scored 39.1 points per game this season.
Hmm.
That's current, even after we got shut out in the last game. And then KU scored 38 points a game. Points allowed per game, we've allowed 31. They've allowed 30. This will be a very nail biter of a game, but I still feel pretty confident we'll win. I said the same thing about K State, so now I'm like jinxing us, but I'm trying to unjinx the jinx. I'm trying to double jinx it because basically at this point, like we're not incredibly good. We know that we can pass the ball really well. Can KU pass the ball really well? Because if they can pass the ball really well, then we're honestly it's an uphill battle and it's really tough.
Yeah.
All that is to say is that KU has lost 3 games in a row. They've only lost 3 games this season. We should be able to continue that trend. One would think. You can buy a ticket to this game for $16. Maybe you'll see me there. Probably not. The ability to get me there would be like quintuple times more expensive than actually the price of the ticket, which is hilarious. I think we win. I don't feel as comfortable as I would have last week. Like if we had beat K State by 1 or lost to K State by 7, I would have been much more hopeful and felt a lot better about this game. I don't know. There's such a hard time putting last week's game of 48-0 loss against K State into perspective. That makes me just very tentative to say, oh yeah, we'll win this game. Like I feel like this game could be 24-21 OSU. I've seen that before, where it's like eked out a win in Lawrence. It's been like, wait, what the heck? We should have won by 30. Why do we only lose? Why
Hmm.
do we only win by 3? I kind of feel like that's what's gonna happen. I feel like we're gonna win barely. We'll barely stretch it out.
If if we lose to Kansas, because I kind of want to, you know, you and I both agree that this year is not like the sky is falling, type thing.
Not at all. No,
Um,
no. We
thus
need
far,
no,
if we
no,
lose to Kansas, is the sky falling?
no, no. If we lose to Kansas, then we're injured. The injury thing, injury bug gets old when you keep saying it. But like, if we lose to Kansas, then we really are injured because you don't score. You don't allow 48 points to K State and score 0, and then follow it up with a losing to Kansas and not say at the end of the year you were just really injured. You just don't.
If Sanders going to play,
Yeah, because Gundy hasn't said anything different.
does he ever?
No, but like Gundy says he'll like everyone's no one no I shouldn't say Gundy. No one said he won't play. At this point, it's like everyone's kind of saying he'll play. Like, no one's if Sanders gets ruled out like Thursday, all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, hang on, maybe we do lose.
We might
But
have to do a whole new podcast.
well, another hour 30, run it back, baby. I just don't. We'll probably win. Probably not a great win. We probably win.
I'm kind of under the same, maybe a 28-21, 24-21, 24-14, an NFL score.
Yeah, NFL score. It's not an
Not
Eagles
a Falcon
score, not a Falcon
or
score.
Falcons Panthers.
I'm sorry, DJ Moore, you should have had to walk home because you took off your helmet. You should know not to do that, but also that wasn't a penalty. So I don't know.
I feel like
That's a total side tangent too that I just spoke about.
That might be one of the closer walks from NFL city to NFL city outside of the Northeast. I think the Northeast is a little different, but
yeah. Well, I mean, if Rams Chargers, and you lose, like, I mean,
sure,
walking
I'll
from
walk
the home team tunnel to the opposing team tunnel, like, I don't know. I mean, actually, but with traffic, that might be a forever walk. So you got to navigate traffic.
Yeah.
I'm getting too ahead of myself here. Either way, I'm saying 24-21, we win. What are you saying?
I'll go 28-24.
And please follow at the CGA Tour on Twitter and Instagram for more. And we'll catch you guys again soon. Peace.